Hey everyone, welcome back to the Magnetic Goddess podcast. I'm your host, Amy Lee Westervelt, Magnetic Goddess. I have an amazing guest today. This gal and I, we've been connected for a really long time. She likes my posts, I like her posts. We definitely vibe. We definitely have a lot in common. I've got Jenna Faye Madden here. She is an energetic business strategist and she is an empath like me. So given everything that's going on in the world right now at the time of this recording, I definitely am really grateful that she's the person that came up in the rotation to speak with today because she's amazing. And I know that we're going to have a fabulous conversation. We had a conversation beforehand about whether we should even do this today. And we came to the conclusion that it's better to lead with integrity and vulnerability. And so we're here for you despite everything going on. So welcome, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Amy Lee, for having me here with you today and for us to have a real raw conversation. I'm really excited to see what comes through. And like you said, we've been connected for so long, so it also feels really special to spend some time together and co-create.
Absolutely. I love the way you said that, to co-create. Absolutely. So just to get us started, energetic business strategist, that sounds like a real dream job, right? But like, how did you get to be doing that in the world? Like, I imagine you didn't start there. Like, tell me how the trajectory of getting to that title.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wish I just woke up one day and been like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. But yeah, like most or all of us, I feel like my journey really started about 7 years ago. And the Cliff Notes version of that is I had zero entrepreneurial vision, plan, didn't even really know it could be a possible path for me. So I put myself through university. It was in corporate, in a soul-sucking job, did not love it. And kind of like the gateway drug for me was network marketing, but really 10 years ago this year. And that led me into a path of, oh my God, like there's other options out there. There's other things out there. So I started going to conferences. I started getting into personal development. And long story short, left my corporate job 7 years ago, basically to the date from when we're recording this. And I had no real plan, had no savings. And my kind of bridge into entrepreneurship to keep my expanding beyond my MLM business was to become a personal trainer and a spiritual life coach healer kind of person. So I jumped into that. And then about a year after starting more of my businesses and my own stuff, I started traveling full time, which I'm still doing now, 6 years later, and kind of realized at that point I had to start learning how to move things online, which is what I did. But I also found over time that actually pretty quickly a lot of women were like, wait, how did you quit your job and how did you find your purpose and how did you start your business? And things kind of came full circle where I realized that it's just kind of like personal training and nutrition, all these things. I was pretty good at it, but I'm a lot better, I feel like, at helping people go forth and multiply, so to speak, like where they're good at it. And my actual skills and expertise, I realized, was a lot more on the leadership business side of things than it was the like actual doing the healing sessions or the nutrition consults or the PT sessions. So yeah, it's been a evolution ever since then to grow my brand, my company, now known as Soul Meets Strategy, to really kind of bridge those things, bring in the grounded energy, bring in the actual practical strategy, bring in the feminine, the masculine, and basically bring those two worlds together.
It's crazy how parallel that is to my own experience because I think I left my MLM 5 years ago, about 2 weeks ago. And yeah, same. Like I was so inspired to be a visionary, to inspire women to have it all, all the law of attraction stuff, that when this MLM was in its infancy, well, I thought it was in its infancy. I was one of the first 1,000 people in the company. I definitely felt that calling of like, okay, I can take this vehicle and do this work. At a certain point, I was like, this is not the vehicle for this work anymore.
Yeah.
And I made a pivot, and it's just interesting that we share that in common, because I think that network marketing can absolutely be a stepping stone, a catapult for personal development, professional development, because I think it gives you this opportunity to be a leader in a vacuum. and then kind of like take your leadership out of the vacuum. What I find is sometimes the disheartening part about it is that, especially when you first leave, people assume that the only reason that you're successful in what you're doing is because you had a big team, right? Like, oh, well, you had a big team. So, and it's interesting, like when I look back at like now at my client base, I don't think maybe one of the people in my membership is still affiliated with that company. And here we are 5 years later, in your case, 10 years later, and we're thriving in what we're doing completely independent of that energy,
I think that's such a good point. Yeah, because when I think back to, there was very few people from my team that came with me into kind of this other world and this other side of things. And it definitely did not really correlate at all in terms of my growth or my success. Like it had nothing really to do with the team that I had built. And a lot of those people are still within that company. It's funny because I still even use that company's products, but it just stopped. I just didn't want to be basically a cleanse coach, nutrition coach for people at a certain point too, where I realized that there was something else, there was something bigger. And it's kind of full circle though at the same time, because in the more recent months and years, I've started doing a lot more like affiliate marketing, but it's such a different energy. I don't know if you have found this, but now, I have lots of like little affiliate passive things going of recommending softwares and things that I use for my clients. And then that has built up, but even like some products, but now it's like it's not hidden. It's not this like I'm building a team. It's literally like, oh yeah, these are the things I use and love if you want to use them too. Versus back then I remember taking photos of things and like hiding the company name and being like, message me for a BOGO. And I'm like, I feel like those days are kind of done, at least for me.
Yeah, in the company that I was in, you couldn't be photographed on social media wearing anybody else's clothing. So I remember being like, oh gosh, there's a picture of me that someone tagged me in, and I have jeans on and I'm not allowed to wear jeans. And when I finally left that company, I actually went to a different clothing company because I just liked their clothes. And I wasn't doing it for the leadership aspect. I was doing it for the discount, full disclosure.
Yeah.
And I remember asking the CEO, like, so wait, I can wear whatever I want? Like, I don't have to wear these clothes? And they're like, no, like, why would you have to wear like, we don't want you to feel like you have to wear it. But like in this other company, it was like, so-and-so, the owner of the company saw this picture of you online. You need to take it down because you're not wearing their clothes. And so that was our version of that. We were allowed to talk about it all day long. In fact, fun story, I was actually one of the people who was really instrumental in making it so we were allowed to sell our brand online, because for a really long time, our company was like, no, we're not doing it that way. They didn't understand it, and because of me being a military wife and a bunch of other people who had various reasons why they couldn't go do pop-up parties, we were able to do that. And it became a $1 billion business as a result of all the online selling we did. So that innovation that they were afraid was going to be the end of their business ended up being the thing that, made it so they could buy a private jet or whatever. So
that's incredible. And I think such a good point, that it's not like network marketing is right or wrong. And I mean, I still think in many ways it can be such a great business and model and tool. But I think the big thing I've seen is it really just can be such a great catalyst for people. And like the downfall can be that many of us get kind of sucked up in it, where it's like our whole identity. And I think what's really beautiful is seeing people embrace that they can have their own identity and products can totally be a part of it. But I love seeing leaders really stepping into their leadership. And so it's like that double-edged, pros and cons side of the spectrum, where some people don't see their power and potential and they just kind of stay in that environment, even though there's more calling them. But also so many of us, I feel like it was exactly what we needed, that has opened up so much more. And I know for me, it's definitely helped me become a better leader. And even though there was a lot of things I learned that I would not do anymore through that, I feel like it's kind of like dating. Like we kind of learn what we want as women through what we don't want. And so it was really such a beautiful growth accelerator for me that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, I would have to say that too. I mean, in my case, there was some trauma that went along with it, and maybe a little bit of gaslighting and a
Definitely me too.
cult behavior. But other than that, I definitely think I did learn a lot. What I think is really interesting is when you're a leader in a multi-level marketing or direct sales, there's this idea that you're supposed to keep the personality of you on the inside and lead with the company, lead with the company's values, lead with the company's dreams, desires, and all the things. And you're supposed to keep the vulnerability at a minimum because your team should look up to you. They shouldn't really see that fallibleness in you, right? Like that humanity makes you look bad as a leader in that space. And I think what's interesting is that when you get out into the real world and in the coaching world, maybe it's not the real world, but the coaching world, it's almost like you're now expected to grow under a microscope. Like now it's like, I want to see all our vulnerability. I want to hear all of the stories. I want to know what you're going through. That's going to make me follow you. Versus in MLM, where it's like, I don't want to know any of that. I want you to be an influencer through and through. And more the company, I think, feels that way, right? Like the company is like, we don't want to see any of your scars. We don't want to see any of the imperfections of you. You're towing the line. Then you get out there and you're on your own boss. And it's like, how are you going to connect to these people if you can't express that humanity and that growth over the time? And I don't know if I've ever really articulated that or understood that, but just having this conversation with you, I think would you agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah. I feel like there's kind of two extremes here that happen because there's like the identity of kind of the company and essentially being a salesperson versus being our own salesperson of our own brand. And yeah, like you said, and I think now more than ever, like even compared to 5 years ago, 2 years ago, people want intimacy. They want to feel people's humanity. I mean, we've got the rise of AI. We've just got so many crazy evolution things going on right now. And I feel like more than ever as consumers, which we all are, we like want to feel someone's heart. We want to feel who they are. And I feel like too, there's this difference though between, because I hear this from clients a lot, like, oh, I have to tell everyone everything online. Like I can't keep anything private. And I'm like, well, I think there's a big difference between what I call sacred privacy, where we don't have to share it and we're solid in that, versus there's like shame attached to it, but it would actually set us free to share some more than what we're sharing. And I think sometimes we put ourselves in these little boxes online and we're like, okay, I have my content buckets, I'm going to talk about this thing and that thing and how it relates to my coaching thing. And then people wonder why people aren't buying, but they can't. It's like nothing really makes you different from somebody else, even if you have the best offer, because they can't feel you. But then at the other side of the spectrum, we can't just use our social media as like a journal entry where we just dump on there. And so I feel like it's like such a dance in my experience of sharing and leading more, which I agree, like especially in the coaching industry, like that is kind of one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, is being more us online.
Yeah, and I think that came full circle for me this week, with everything that's going on in Israel, being a Jewish woman. I used to be a lot more political, a lot more activist online for the various causes that I belong to. I know this because every time I look at my Facebook memories, I'm like, cringe, cringe, cringe. This would not align with, where I am right now and whatever. But I really had to think about like, how was I going to respond to what was going on as a Jewish woman, right? Because with everything going on, like, there's so many echoes of what happened during the Holocaust from a Jewish perspective, notwithstanding the fact that everything that's going on with Palestine, like I do not for 1 second condone the elimination of any innocence anywhere at any point. And then this isn't a what's the word I'm looking for? Consolation to that. But I had to say something. And it was the first time in a long time that I actually commented in any way. And that was hard for me, because I think there are probably a lot of people in my audience, as it is now, that don't necessarily believe or have the same ideals. Maybe ideals isn't right, because my audience would, but maybe they don't agree politically, right? With how I feel on the situation. And for me to stand up and say that the way that I did, I think that in some ways that may have been alienating, but in some ways it was like a true test of the vulnerability of me as a coach. And I know that you and I share a lot of values. Obviously human rights is one of them, but also other things, right? Crunchy things, mom things. And I'm just curious, like, what is your take on how do you stand in your power, in your authenticity, knowing that there will be aspects of you that will turn certain clients off, that will potentially, I mean, will alienate you from certain individuals? Like, how do you fortify yourself in knowing that that's okay, and deal with that uncomfortability, I guess?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I feel like this is so my arena as well, because especially over the last couple years, like from 2020 to now, I've gone through my own waves of how outspoken I am or choose not to be through this. And I mean, through that, I've been censored more than I can count. I've had Instagram accounts deleted on me, et cetera, et cetera. And what I've realized through the process was a couple things. Number one, I feel like most of us are self-censoring ourselves, and not saying what we want to say. So before we can even really shift the censorship online around like political views and all these things, I'm like, well, we need to like clear that stuff within us first and foremost. And I think with that being said, at least in my experience, I've had people unfollow me. Like I looked just the other day and I didn't even post anything that like wild, but I lost 20 followers and it wasn't even anything really all that crazy. But I mean, I've had a lot of people unfollow me over the years. I even think of my wedding, which was 4 years ago from this month, and we had 80 people there, and probably 60 of them don't talk to us anymore because we had differing views from them of what's gone on over the last
I know what those views are. I support you.
So I mean, there's been a lot of that, and I've had, hate emails, I've had projections, I've had a lot. But what I will say is I would say 80% of my clients who come to me, they say something to me along the lines of, we share similar values, or I saw you spoke out about X, so I knew I wanted to hire you. So it's like they obviously value my business expertise or what have you, but it's like that personal human connection. And I've also had women say, well, we don't exactly share the same views, and I'm okay with that. Like we can both think our own things, but the fact that you hold your views and you share your views and you're not really wavering in those things, like really gave me a lot of strength. Or I didn't really get it before, but I do now. So I guess for me, even though it's been for sure hard at moments, I also feel like I've gotten a lot of evidence and strength from seeing that it's strengthening and supporting other people to stand in their truth. And so I feel like on a practical level, I definitely do like a lot of shielding and just like moving the energy and stuff, because like you, I'm really empathic, so I can really deeply feel those things and hold on to them. But I also feel like it's so beneficial to hold strong on that while dancing with it. Like now I find I kind of weigh the pros and cons where I'm like, how should I say this? How much should I say? And it's not even about my own self-expression so much now. It's more about like playing on big tech and making sure that my accounts stay alive at this point.
I know, seriously, like it's crazy. I mean, I'm a Facebook power admin, which means like I'm like recognized as one of the people that Facebook is like, okay, this person knows how to build groups, right? And if they only knew my true belief about Facebook, my true opinions about the way that the censorship goes, and the way that it favors, they probably wouldn't want me in their community. I imagine there's a lot of us, but like I said, this was my first time, and I used to be very vocal about this. I used to be very, advocating for this particular cause. And I got really quiet about it for a long time, because I just felt as though, it wasn't serving my business. But here I am in a place where I don't have the luxury. I mean, like, what do I say to the 6 million people who were murdered? Like, sorry, my business, my livelihood, like, where do you draw the line? And for me, this was the line. And I definitely got some flack on my I Stand with Israel post. from some people. Oh yeah, I'll have to send you screenshots. You will be like,
Yeah.
because of course, after the hair flip, the person blocked me, and then nobody else could see the comments, but I took screenshots of them. So I'll have to show you. You'd be floored. You'd be like, which side of the aisle are you on? Like this was very out there. And it's interesting too, and I feel like I can have this conversation with you specifically. My little brother, who I adore, he's actually moving today out of my house. He's been here for 3 years. But he has a show on YouTube, and he basically makes a living on YouTube criticizing and like roasting other podcast people, specifically people on like the Howard Stern show and all this stuff. And the other day, my little brother, and I'm going to use a word that's not appropriate, but I just want to say at the beginning, I'm a special needs mom. So I want you to understand, audience, as I say this word. It's very emotionally charged for me, and I don't take it lightly, but I need you to understand, like, this man criticized my little brother on this YouTube, and said that my little brother, who he's not that little, he's 37, but he said that my brother was a retard who had a broken brain and ate out of the trash. And like, just matter of factly speaking about another human being like this. And my brother was unfazed. He's like, yeah, I know. Isn't that great? Like, he shouted me out on his show. I'm going to get so many views. And I'm just like, I can't even conceive of a world where someone could say that about me and I could giggle about it or I could laugh about it. And so knowing you and how much more on the front lines you are of this advocacy, of doing the work, of standing in your beliefs, I have to say, Jenna, I'm in awe of you, because my body couldn't hold that kind of vitriol, you know? Like, I couldn't, like, my little brother, he's like, oh, it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's hilarious. And I'm just like, I remember when I was in the MLM and the things that people said when I left, and the vicious, horrible things they said even when I was still in it, you know, people who had left, and the trolling and the energy of the anger. And now what's going on with this conflict. And I'm just like, really, I'm in awe. Like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can be the gentle, kind, loving person you are, and at the same time absorb all of that and transmute it. Like, do you have any, you know, and I usually ask people, you know, what makes you a magnetic goddess? But like, I think this is your thing. I think the way you alchemize this swampy energy and continue to be the light worker that you are, I think that is your magnetism. And so I guess what I want to know is, from an energetic somatic standpoint, how do you move that through your body without it letting it destroy you, without feeling like you've got to go hide?
Wow. Well, first, thank you. Thanks for the compliment and for witnessing me. And as you were saying that, it was just giving me this like flash flood of like all these like just over the years, the scenarios that have come up. And I mean, it's been everything, you know, from like haters on videos, but even things like, it wasn't all that long ago, it was 2 to 3 years ago, that we had this like crazy stalker scenario where someone, they definitely had some mental health challenges, and they were attacking me online and my husband, to the point where they were trying to track like where we were traveling and living, and they were posting in Facebook, like local Facebook groups,
Oh,
being
like
like, hey, have
doxing
you
you?
seen, yeah, and like basically like they saw we were online coaches, and they don't understand what that is, so they associate that on, maybe they've had a bad experience with someone, I don't know, but they assumed that we were con artists. So they were literally posting and like had saved my profile photo of me and my husband, posting in local Facebook groups being like, if you see these people, like steer clear, they're con artists, like blah 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 blah. And I'm like, who are you people? And that actually went on and off for like a year and a half, where it would stop and then it would resurface because they would make another account and look at where we were traveling to and do the whole thing. And to be honest, like it created a lot of contraction in me seeing that happen, and also just a lot of kind of anxiety as of wondering, and no one likes to feel like they're going to be cast out, and I'm thinking, oh, like we, are here to make community, we're here to make connections, we're not con artists, like all these crazy things. And I mean, that's just one of many scenarios I've encountered with crazy people projecting and stuff over the years. And I really found like I had to come back into my vision and my mission. Like my motto has always been for years now, hold the vision, not the circumstances, because I feel like the bigger our mission becomes, the bigger our business becomes, the bigger our visibility becomes. Like these things never really stop and go away. And I feel like the more our leadership expands, the more we have to dance with like, okay, well, maybe I should speak into this, maybe I shouldn't. And also maybe sometimes our views don't really go with the grain of things that are out there. And like for me, you know, even just on like political kinds of things, it's like I have empathy and I can see, I feel like a lot of what's going on, but I'm also really good, in my opinion, of like zooming out and seeing like the higher level perspective here of like what's happening on like a human level on the earth realm, where I'm like, it's so sad, these things that happen. And I feel like it continues to fuel the separation consciousness and agenda on this planet. And then I see it happening on these like microscopic levels, like social media, where people attack each other. I was literally chatting with my husband. He just had another video go really viral, and so with that came lots of weird comments, and I always kind of laugh. I'm like, are these even real people? Like they seem like bots. Like the photos, it's like Billy John Joe, and it's like you can't see his face with his middle finger. I'm like, is that even a real person? You know, and I look at this stuff and I just have to realign and like realign and realign, like
On the
even
White
if it's
House Facebook page,
time.
you're like, yeah, okay, you're
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah, okay.
right. And I just realign and I think, well, kind of like you said with your younger brother, I'm like, well, at least they're boosting us in the algorithm. And so I try to think of this from like a higher self perspective where it's not always easy. And even those people that were stalking us, that was like one of the harder ones. But I think what's the higher lesson here? Like what's the opportunity? Like it has to be happening for a reason. And it's not just suffering. I don't believe that God, the divine, the higher power wants us to just suffer. Like there's always something there for us. So I really always try to, without obsessing, I like try to look at like what's the lesson or the opportunity? How did I potentially allow this or create this? Especially if I'm talking on like an individual, not like big
Right.
collective things kind of issue, but like say on social media, it's like how did I allow this into my space? Because I remember talking to a mentor a long time ago and asking him, because at this point I constantly had clients ghosting, bouncing on payments, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, what do you do when this happens? He's like, it just doesn't really happen to me. I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm just not really available for that. I'm like, that's an option. And it's kind of funny to think years down the road where I think, yeah, that very rarely happens to me now. And so
Yeah.
I really feel like a lot of the things that have happened is on some level I was kind of receptive and allowing it in, and also I was allowing myself to like take it on as my truth. Like I feel like when we get super triggered by things on social media, I'm like, well, what part of me believes that this is true, which is why I'm feeling some sort of emotional charge, or like what part of me fears that this is true, or how, you know, how everyone perceives me, and now I'm taking it on as truth. So I don't know, a bit of a tangent, but that's what comes through for
No, I don't
me.
think it was a tangent at all. I think it was powerful, and I think that it went exactly where it needed to go. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, you know, as within, so without, right? So like somewhere, like all of a sudden the other day, I woke up to two different people commenting. I haven't had drama on my stuff in a long time, but the
Yeah.
moment that I put myself out there, you know, is when my brain goes, uh-oh, we're putting ourselves out there. And now I'm an energetic match for people to complain about it. But before, I wasn't doing that. So it wasn't that I wasn't saying controversial things. It was that I wasn't energetically afraid because there was nothing to fight with. And then incidentally, there was another post that happened on because of the thing that happened with the, you know, on the world stage. So it's crazy. I mean, we really are energetically attuned or not to certain things coming into our world. And to do the work you do and to be the voice that you are, I guess there's an aspect of you that just knows that comes with the territory, because if it didn't, then you're not really making an impact, because you're surrounded by, you know, what do they call it? You're in a, you know, everybody around you agrees with you, an echo chamber. That's it.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we
so
put
if
ourselves.
you're in an echo chamber, then you're really not doing anything. If you're surrounded by people who have what you have, then it's like, what's the point? How am I going to help people here? So you do have this certain expectation that there's going to be friction. and go into it with your sword up and your shield, and you're like, let's go, and I just think that that's so, I guess I've never really gotten to say that. I think I've said it on a couple of your posts, but here's me saying it personally. That the work that you do is really powerful, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart. So thank you for that. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to like get into your world? If they're like, oh my gosh, I already know what you're saying and I'm all over it. How do they get in touch with you? How do they hook up with you?
Yes. Okay, I'll answer that. And one thought I have to share from what you said is
Yes.
this has been in my field so much lately, and it feels like kind of the perfect thought before we transition out of this is what we resist persists. I'm sure other people have heard this before. And I feel like when we have these charges that happen with our emotions, when stuff happens, it's like sometimes we actually just need to be in the emotions and we need to process it. We need to heal. And then sometimes we actually just need to be the alchemist. We need to move the energy, whether that's like move on and keep marketing, move on, do other things, move on, get outside. But I feel like if we stay in a perpetual state of resistance, whether that's in our head of like, what if this happens, or when these things happen, if we're just staying in the contraction, then like you said, we're going to keep experiencing these things. So I had to say that because I feel like that what you resist persists has just been in my field so much this week, when you have kind of a theme and it just keeps coming up. So I'm like, I have to say it because it feels like a code for this episode. And in terms of where I hang out, I would say primarily Facebook and Instagram. So my brand is Soul Meets Strategy. So that's my handle on Instagram. On TikTok, it's my website. And then on Facebook, it's just me, my name, Jenna Faye Madden. And I do love making new connections and like-minded friends. So anyone listening to this, hit me up. Would love to be friends with you.
Yeah, she's amazing, you guys. Like I said, we've been connected for a long time. She hasn't pissed me off yet. So no, I'm kidding. She really has. She's a sweetheart. It's funny because there's another Jenna that I used to get mixed up with her, and I'd be like nice Jenna and mean Jenna. This is nice Jenna. So there you go. There's a little
I'll take it.
there's a little tidbit into my world. So thank you so much for being here, Jenna. You've been amazing. This conversation was just the medicine that I needed in this time. So I appreciate you so much and sharing your empath heart and soul with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And that will do it for another episode of the Magnetic Goddess podcast. Until next time, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, and of course, may you be at peace. Namaste.